This program is aired to meet the needs of information in a plural society. The opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily endorsed by this station.
The following program brought to you in conjunction with Action 4 News and the University of Texas Pan American.
And good evening. I'm Romeo Cantu with Action 4 News, and welcome to this political forum. Two races are on the November ballot as a special election, and one of them is the District 28 congressional seat. This is a race to watch. It affects nearly 200,000 voters in Hidalgo County alone. Tonight, we have invited the candidates so you can meet them, hear their issues, and vote smart. Tonight's political forum is brought to you by the National Hispanic Political Organization, the Student Union of UTPA, and Action 4 News. The candidates are Frank Enriquez of McAllen, an attorney. Mr. Ron Avery from Seguin, a bar owner and architect. Mr. Henry Cuellar of Laredo, who is the incumbent congressman. Now, here are the guidelines and the rules that these men will be following. Each candidate has agreed to the following. There are 2 minutes for opening statements. Each candidate will be asked the same question and will be given 90 seconds to answer that question. We will be strict on time, so tonight's questions come from our audience, the students, and the UTPA students, and of course Action 4 News listens line. Now, if a candidate wants to respond or refute a candidate's answer, you can do so, but you will only have 30 seconds to do that. And to make things exciting, the candidates will also be given an opportunity to ask each other a question. We will begin with the person who won the drawing, and that is Mr. Enriquez with your opening statement.
Let me first thank UT Pan Am, the NHPO, Channel 4, and its viewers for this opportunity to speak to you. The job of a congressman is to be the voice of the people that he represents. Redistricting put us into a district represented by Mr. Cuellar, and I knew that he had proven himself unable, or at least unwilling, to be the voice of our people. When I was asked to run, I did not hesitate to accept the challenge. As a young man living in our district, I heard the call of my country and I volunteered to serve in Southeast Asia during the Vietnam War. I now have a brother in Iraq. I stand 100% with our troops there. However, the misguided policies of the Republican administration, supported by Cuellar and others like him, have put us in a war in Iraq based on false premises, and the situation continues to deteriorate. Rapidly moving towards an all-out civil war, we are facing more and more casualties. 2,700 dead, 100,000 American veterans and troops disabled, and 600,000 Iraqis dead. And our generals are telling us that there is no end in sight and that there cannot be any troop reductions until at least 2010. As your congressman, I will do what Mr. Cuellar has not been able to or has refused to do, and we will turn Iraq over to the Iraqis within a reasonable time frame and bring our people, our soldiers, home. As your congressman, I will represent you, I will represent your interests, I will be your voice in Washington. Thank you.
Mr. Avery.
Thank you. I would also like to thank the National Hispanic Professional Organization for having us out tonight. Tonight, really, our whole world is in trouble. Not just the United States, not just Mexico, a lot of Latin American countries. Actually, the whole world is in trouble. The reason why is that there's two philosophical views of government that are at war with one another. One of them you've heard about is democracy. It's where 51% of the people can vote away your liberties, your life, your liberty, and your possessions. Aristotle abandoned democracy 400 years before Christ. Now we're talking about it again. This country is not a democracy. This country is a democratic constitutional republic. Our country cannot acquire any authority that you sitting out there, any one of you, do not have in yourself. And these, unfortunately, it's global bankers that are running this thing called democracy, and they are scaring the people and making them vote in tyrannical powers by other means like mass media controlling public opinion, the global war on terror, the global economy, the global warming. All these things are to scare people into voting tyrannical powers to government. And it only benefits a very few people on this planet. And I don't have any enemies. I just want them to repent of what they're doing. I'm pursuing my own life, liberty, and possessions to make them secure. I'm going to do the same for you. I know the principles of property, and I'm going to use them in government. Thank you.
Mr. Cuellar, you now have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you very much. And again, I appreciate the sponsors for allowing us to give this opportunity to be here with you. You know, when I was first elected to Congress 2 years ago, I had 3 goals. That is to work hard, to be accessible, and to produce real results. I believe I've delivered on all those 3 goals. I have made over 500 personal visits to all the communities in my congressional district. I have passed 11 out of 11 amendments on the House floor. And I have brought in more than $800 million to this congressional district, making sure that we deliver to our particular congressional district. I know what it is to struggle. In fact, my father went only to a 3rd grade education. My mother went only to a 6th grade education because in those days, they would take out the young kids and put them out to work in the field in Las Piscas. And I understand. But you know, my parents were not able to get an education. But they told all of us, I'm the oldest of 8 kids, work hard, make sure you get an education, and have faith. And this is what I've done as a congressman. And this is why, as a congressman, I have worked hard to make sure that we also produce to make sure that we have the educational opportunities. And this is why when I was in the Texas state legislature, 14 years, I was the author of the Texas Grant, which has brought millions of dollars. In fact, to this particular university, $17 million just this particular year. As the former chairman of the budget for both higher and public education, we brought in millions of dollars for the tuition revenue bonds to expand this university, including bringing the money for the South Texas Community College, now the South Texas College. So my priorities are education, improving education, health care, which is I was also the author of the CHIP program in the state of Texas, and also making sure that we have economic development. My name is Henry Cuellar. I want to be your congressman. We will establish an office here in McAllen, one in Stark County, and make sure that we are accessible and produce for this particular part of our district. Thank you very much.
All right, gentlemen, we will now begin with the questions. Just a reminder, you will each hear the question. You will be given 90 seconds to respond, after which you will be given to rebuttal if you'd like to your opponent's question, and answer that is, and you will have 30 seconds to do so after that. Mr. Enriquez, you won the coin toss, the drawing, so to say. Let's begin with you. The first question, immigration reform. The House plan omits a guest worker program and does not allow a path to citizenship. If elected, how will you vote on the plan and why?
Well, we need immigration reform across the board. We don't need a wall. I would vote against funding the wall. My opponent has voted for funding the wall. He has voted other times for funding the wall. He has voted he has brought down Republicans that he could not convince that went back up and voted for the wall. We do not need that. We do not need to spend $7 or $8 billion on something that is the wrong signal. The right signal would be comprehensive immigration reform that would give people that are here a path to citizenship, that would give people that are here, that are law-abiding, that are willing to pay taxes, that are hardworking, as most people are, a path to citizenship. The guest worker program, in the way they're talking about it, would create a second class of citizens, and we do not need that. We do not need to have slave labor or second class citizens. What we need is comprehensive immigration reform. Congress is ready to do it. My opponent has not submitted any comprehensive reform bill. I am ready to go up as a veteran. I have served this country. I'm willing to serve this district. I'm willing to go to Washington and fight for comprehensive immigration reform, which is something that is very much needed here.
Mr. Avery, you would now have 90 seconds for that same question.
Yes, sir. Under the principles of property, every nation has a right to control its borders. Open borders, of course, is an oxymoron. By definition, borders mean closed unless you have permission to enter. That's the nature of sovereign countries. At the same time, as I said before, our whole world's in trouble. Mexico is already a victim of global economics. We're also going to be a victim, and we're in the process of being a victim of global economics. I would vote for any plan that protected the property of American citizens, that protected the jobs of American citizens, that was humane to Mexican refugees, that took care of people, employers that needed to hire labor, and also, though, to stop surveillance. I don't want any high-tech surveillance of citizens along the border. I don't want all that stuff. I believe that's what I'd vote for. Thank you.
Mr. Cuellar.
Thank you very much. I have co-sponsored the House version of the McCain bill, Kennedy bill, which is a comprehensive legislation. This bill provides three parts that are very important. One, providing border security to make sure that we secure our border. We're not with a wall, but secure our border with more border patrol, more technology, sensors, cameras to make sure that we protect our border. The second thing is that it has a temporary guest worker plan, which is again something that we need to make sure that the ag industry, the business industry has the workers that they need. And the third part is having some sort of pathway to citizenship. This is the bill that we co-sponsor, that I co-sponsor with Representative Luis Gutierrez, who's the main, one of the main sponsors of this bill. On the wall, I voted twice against the wall. I know that my opponent here is entitled to his opinion, but I don't think he's entitled to his own facts. The Homeland Security that he's referring to had part of the funding there, but it has Homeland Security where everybody voted for it except for 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans, including all the Texas Democrats, including the legislators from this area, because it had money for border security, firefighters, to make sure that we provide Homeland Security, to make sure that we have the customs inspectors for our bridges. So therefore, this is why the Homeland Security bill, I voted in favor of it, to make sure that we have border security here in our border.
Okay, now open it up to rebuttal. Any of you all have a rebuttal you'd like to make?
I would.
Okay, you have 30 seconds.
Well, from Mr. Cuellar, from the very beginning when he got into Congress in February of 2005, immediately voted for the Real ID Act, which started the ball rolling on the border fence, which would have taken away a lot of the voting rights of people and initially started the funding in San Diego. Once you get that ball rolling, then it's not going to stop. They keep telling us they're not going to build it, they're not going to fund it, and it just keeps coming down the line, and they say they're not for it, and here it is.
Mr. Avery or Mr. Cuellar?
Be happy there.
Okay.
Be glad to the rebuttal. Again, my opponent is an attorney. He's entitled to his interpretation, but the facts are there. We have to make sure that we look at the legislation to provide border security. And I've always been very, very strong when it comes to border security. We look at the legislation, we look at what's in the best interest of the districts, and since I represent a lot of the border area, I will do what's good for this particular district, regardless of any political party. I will represent this district.
Mr. Avery, you have a rebuttal? If not, we will move on to the next question.
We move on.
Okay, and we begin with you. Some of you have touched on it tonight, but let's go a little bit deeper into this and a little bit more specific. What is your plan for border security, and will you support bills that fund building a fence or a wall?
Actually, I've flip-flopped a little bit on that, I'll admit it. I do believe that in places where we really have a real breach, where there's people, just lots of people coming in, it may need that. I mean, I don't know, but we do need to control just the free flow of people across the borders. I believe that responsible legislation should make employers prove that they can't hire citizens and they have to prove that they advertised for them. And if they can prove that they can't get citizens, I believe they should be able to go to terminals where the aliens, both illegal and legal, can be processed and go to work for these people. And I believe if they're here for the right amount of time, they should become citizens. But I'm not just for people coming across the border and wandering around in the United States anymore. I mean, it's just irresponsible.
Mr. Cuellar, you now have 90 seconds for the same question.
Yes. Well, I voted twice against the wall, in December and then earlier this year, because I don't believe the wall is the best way of using taxpayers' dollars to provide border security. There was two things wrong with that bill. One was, of course, the wall, but the other thing is that bill said that the southern part of the United States gets a wall, but the northern part of the United States gets a study to look at some sort of system. That's unfair to our part of our area. I think what we ought to do is build bridges and not fences, and this is why we have to make sure that we provide a immigration reform and keep away from the wall. The wall, the funding part of it, again, is something that we have to, in fact, we have a meeting next week with, hopefully with the Secretary of Homeland Security to talk to him about the interpretation of this bill, to make sure that we tell them, don't do the wall, but go with the virtual fence, which is a high technology, which is something that we need to complement with more border security to make sure that we have the border security protection that we need in our area, but at the same time, allow people that want to come in, the tourists, the trade that are so important to this area. The tourism is so important to this area. The area that here that trade depends so much. In fact, what I've been doing, that once we win this race and take over in January and run and put in office here, we're already working at the staffing level that we need for customs inspectors, because we need more customs inspectors to move trade and tourism through this particular area.
Mr. Enriquez.
Thank you. Border security is important for the border. It's very important for the economy here. It's very important for the people that live here. Everybody that knows about the way that we have crime down here, we need more border security. We don't need to spend that money, and they've already allocated, with his help, $1.2 billion on a fence that they're going to put in. Now they're talking about, well, maybe we can use it for something else, but that bill says $1.2 billion. I would not have voted for that. My opponent says that he has a proud record of amending laws, didn't submit an amendment to exclude that. That has been allocated, and what's the next step after that? We do not need a wall. I am adamantly opposed to it. The people that he brought down all went back and voted for the wall. In my opinion, he is for the wall and has advocated very well on the wall. As far as being an attorney, yes, I'm an attorney. He's an attorney also, an inactive attorney. I'm an active attorney, and I'm a veteran, and I will go fight in Washington to make sure that wall does not get built, and we spend that money on other things, like no child left behind. Let's get rid of that. Or if it's going to stay, let's get it funded properly. The students here at Pan American University, they talked about grants. Everybody knows that when you apply for those grants, a lot of times they're not adequately funded. Let's spend that money on things that we need here that make sense and aren't a bad symbol.
Okay, either of you have a rebuttal. You have 30 seconds if you'd like to make a rebuttal with that question.
So again, as I mentioned, the Homeland Security, and I know the good intentions of my opponent, but again, we got to understand, this bill had no amendments. The rules were no amendments, so no amendments could be added, no matter how much you want to add an amendment. This bill got supported by every single Democrat in the state of Texas, because we had to provide the funding for Homeland Security, for our firefighters, for our policemen to do this. So for him to come in and say, we couldn't have done this, or I would have done this, those are good intentions, but they just don't understand the process.
Avery, rebuttal to that?
I don't think so.
All right, let me do a follow-up question here, and we're going to begin again with Mr. Cuellar, talking about the border fence. If you are for the wall, how do you propose funding it? If you are not for the wall, what do you propose doing with the money?
Well, I'm certainly against the building of the wall, and therefore the funding should be used for something else. Should be used for technology. As you know, when you look at the cameras that we have right now, we only have a few cameras that are out there that are active and working. We need to have more of the cameras, more of the sensors. I would put more money into what we call the virtual wall, the technology that we need to have, but at the same time provide the funding, which is very, very important to our Border Patrol to make sure that they have the proper resources. At the same time, have the dollars available for the detention beds, which is important. We added another 6,400 detention beds on this appropriation bill. We added another money to add another 1,500 border patrol, another money for 500 customs agents. So we need to have here. So that's where the money should be go. The money from the Homeland Security, which is again very, very important to our particular area.
Okay, Mr. Enriquez, 90 seconds.
The money that has been allocated in that portion of the bill, the $1.2 billion, has nothing to do with all of these other law enforcement matters. There's other money for that. Billions and billions and billions of dollars, and he knows that. This $1.2 billion that they're talking about is for building a physical fence. And if we're getting representation in Washington that says we can't amend it, there's nothing we can do, let's try to figure something else out, then we're not getting the representation that we need in Congress. I am proud to say that I have been endorsed by national magazines. I've been endorsed by this group called the Fighting Democrats, which involves veterans who are running for office and who are going to make a difference and put our country back in the right course. I am proud to say that I have been endorsed and I'm part of their muster list. That's very, very important because what has happened since 2000, since the year 2000, the number of veterans that have been in Congress has decreased. And we need to increase that and get people that can get in there and fight on the home front like we fought overseas and fight for our country and bring it back on the path that it belongs.
Mr. Avery, you now have 90 seconds for that same question.
Yes, I'd like the question again.
Okay, the question is, if you are either for the wall, how do you propose funding that wall? If you are against the wall, what should be done with that money instead?
Well, as I said before, if we're going to have a wall, and so I'm not in favor of a wall running the entire distance of Mexico. I believe that there probably is a need to have them somewhere, and I believe we ought to fund it. I also believe that the INS, and I understand now it's combined with Homeland Security. And let me add that whenever you combine all the police forces in America under one group, that is called tyranny. That's the name of it. You must have separate investigative police forces so they can work against each other. You cannot have one Homeland Security in charge of everything. That's called tyranny. That's the definition of it. And here we are talking about Homeland Security and guarding the borders. What are we doing? We're instituting tyranny within the borders. That's a bigger problem, a much bigger problem. Washington, D.C. is our problem, not this stuff down here. We need, as far as the money, I mean, first of all, we need to get all these unauthorized federal agents that don't have authority to guard borders in the first place. We need to get them out of here. Then we need to get state people down here that are authorized to guard borders and give them the tools to do it. Thank you.
All right. Move on to the next subject. Fiscal responsibility. We'll begin with Mr. Enriquez. The national debt is now more than $8.5 trillion, and it's growing at an average rate of $1.6 billion per day. What are your plans to fix it, and what impact will your plans have on Social Security or taxes?
Well, my plans are not to just allow a blind continuance of this war and follow the policies of the Republican administration that are burying us in this debt of $300 billion so far, and that have been supported by Mr. Cuellar with his votes on the war. What we need to do is, and I never thought I'd say this, but the Republicans are a spend party, and we need to return fiscal responsibility to Washington. We need to stop the spending. If we can put a stop to this war within a reasonable time frame, we can reduce the national debt, and we have to protect Social Security. We have a problem in that they're taking money from the Social Security fund and using it to fund other parts of the budget, including the war. We cannot do this. And then you have a Congress that is getting ready to spend billions and billions of dollars on a fence that is just a bad symbol, that does not send the right message to the world. The United States, America, is about breaking down walls. We've done it all over the world. We do not need that here at all. So what we need to do is we need to focus on the American worker and the American family. We need to do things for them to make them strong again, and we need to reduce that debt because if we don't, we're gonna pass that on to our children, and we're gonna mortgage their future, and that is just wrong.
Mr. Avery.
Yes. We're back to that old problem again. Our national debt, our trade deficit growing out of control. This again is, you can put this on the doorstep of global economics. It is a false policy. It is not real. It's a challenge to the policy of life, liberty, and possessions. That is the only power your government has, is to protect your life, liberty, and possessions. It has power to institute tariffs because you have a right to protect your life, liberty, and possessions and your job. But the federal government refuses to institute tariffs to protect your job. And then they pretend they're going to bring you some jobs. Oh, we're going to bring you some new jobs. That's hypocrisy. They won't protect the job you have, but they're going to bring you a new job while we get deeper and deeper in debt and the deficit grows. It's all fraud, folks. And the problem is in Washington. And if you don't understand the game, you better not get in the kitchen. If that's what's going on, you need to send somebody up there that understands what's cracking out there. Thank you.
Mr. Cuellar.
Yes. As a member of the Budget Committee, I'm extremely concerned about the deficit and the debt that we have. In fact, we have a $7.8 trillion debt that we have right now. 40% of that debt is owned by foreign countries. That is, foreign countries that might not have the best interest in mind when it comes to the United States. Every year we pay $182 billion of interest on this debt, money that can be spent for education and health care and other areas. We need to reduce this particular debt. This is why, as a member of the Budget Committee, I voted to make sure that we reduce this debt, and unfortunately, things are up there a lot of times for party line votes. So you have Republicans voting 22 against, the Democrats voting 16 in favor, and therefore we're not able to reduce the debt. But we're going to keep trying until we get this debt down, which is very, very, very important. Social Security is very important. In fact, I co-sponsor a piece of legislation that says that any money that's put in the Social Security Trust Fund will be used for Social Security and nothing else, and not to run the government like it's been done right now. And this is something to make sure that parents and people like my parents that just have the Social Security can depend on Social Security because it's a good program that's worked for more than 40 years. So I'll protect Social Security. We're going to reduce the debt down and make sure that we're not paying $182 billion of interest on this particular area. The last point I would like to make is again, we got to make sure that we set priorities. And as a member of the Budget Committee, the priority should be putting money in education, healthcare, and economic development, and that's where the money should go. So I thank you very much.
All right. Next
May I
question.
rebut that?
Okay, you have a rebuttal?
Yes. We're not going to get out of the debt. We almost got out of it. We started getting there. As soon as we did, what happened? Yes. As long as we have a Federal Reserve Bank that issues the currency in this country, which is unlawful, paper currency in America is unlawful. It's unconstitutional and unlawful. As long as we have fraudulent currency, we are never going to get out of debt. And we are always going to serve the global bank. And you can just say hello to the globalist world and poverty. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have a rebuttal? If not, we'll move on.
Not
to
at this time.
Okay. Go ahead.
Not at this time.
There we go. We go with Mr. Avery. Next question, the war in Iraq. Mr. Avery, more than 22 Valley servicemen have been killed. Will you keep our troops there or withdraw them? And what about setting a timeline?
That's my question.
That's your question.
Oh, boy. I'm glad we're doing that one. We didn't have an entrance strategy that was lawful, nor logical, nor rational. It was illegal and unlawful. Under the principles of property, you and I cannot attack another person in their life, liberty, and possessions unless they harmed us. And therefore, you can't transfer that power to your government. But guess what? Your government attacked a country that even the president of our country said that weren't involved in 9/11. That means we didn't have any business over there to start with. This is tragic. This is where this country has come to. We don't operate on principles, ladies and gentlemen. We operate as slaves of a global system of people that we don't even know. And we're just their servants. And they come up with these ideas, and we have to go do them, or they quit issuing our credit. You think Mexico's poor. This is the poorest country on earth. And the only reason we function at all is because we're issued credit by the global bankers. We're in serious trouble, and we need to send people to Washington that understand the name of the game and how critical it is. Thank you.
Mr. Cuellar.
Yes. I was not there as a member of Congress when the war against Iraq started. So I've inherited a war that we need to look at very carefully. I voted to support our troops. In fact, I've been to Iraq twice. I have gone to Afghanistan to go visit with our men and women that are serving our countries, and I will do everything to make sure that they have the proper equipment and equipment to make sure that they protect themselves. There was a vote that was taken in the House of Representatives some months ago, where almost every single Democrat and Republican voted against an immediate withdrawal from Iraq. Now, does that mean that we should not be moving toward that direction? The answer is yes, we should start moving toward that direction. Three things have to happen. One, the Constitution that they adopted was so important. Three, the elections that they had back in December was very important. And the third part is the training of the Iraqi military and security forces is so important. I've been there and I've seen the training. They have about 300,000 people right now. It is time that we start moving toward that direction where we let the Iraqis take care of their countries and move the American soldiers back away from harm's way. And I will do everything to protect our soldiers and our veterans. And this is why I have a 100% voting record with our disabled veterans, because they know the work that I've done. It's not the words, but it's the action that counts when you work with the veterans.
Enriquez.
Iraq. It's a Republican war. It's a war that they've made mistakes on. It's a war that we've inherited. It's a war that you need, as President Eisenhower said, you need a new set of eyes on this. And I can't think of a better set of eyes than getting a veteran back in there, someone who has been there, who knows what the horrors of war are, someone who has family in Iraq, like many of the people here have family in Iraq, and take a look at it. It's a different scenario when you've been there, when you have family there, not someone who's been sitting on the sidelines and has never been in that type of situation. You look at things differently. It's more important for you. You have to look at all the options and not simply vote like my opponent, Mr. Cuellar, did in November of last year, not to look at timelines. As he voted in June of this year, not to look at all the alternatives, not to look at the timelines. The time for that has passed. We need to look at all the alternatives. We need to set realistic goals and objectives. We need to set those timelines that are realistic, and we need to turn Iraq over to the Iraqis and not have our families there in the middle of a civil war. They need to come home, and we need to use that money for things that we need here in the United States. Things like the student grants that he talked about that aren't adequately funded.
Okay.
May I rebut that?
You sure can. Mr.
Yeah.
Avery, your rebuttal, you've got 30 seconds.
All right. We'll never establish a lawful government in Iraq. An invading army can never establish a lawful government in another country. You can forget that. You can forget anything working out in Iraq. Remember how we left Vietnam after 15 years or so? 50,000 men dead? Remember the pictures of the helicopters, people hanging off of them? That's how we're going to leave Iraq if we don't get out of there now.
Anybody else? Okay, now we will move on to the next question. We'll begin with Mr. Cuellar. Sex offenders are targeting our Valley children online. What are your plans to protect children from online predators?
One of the 11 amendments that I passed dealt exactly with that, to make sure that we give mandatory time to the people that create sex offenders to our children. I got 2 little girls, and I'm going to do everything to protect my children and my family. And this is why I passed legislation to make sure that, especially for the sex offenders, that have not registered after they get out, that if they don't register, they get mandatory time. And this is one of the legislation that I have passed. And this is why, having three brothers in law enforcement, I believe very strongly in law enforcement and make sure that we give our tools to our law enforcement so they can do the investigations and do the prosecution. At the same time, our courts and the other areas that need that services. And this is what I've done is that not only as a state legislator, but also as a congressman. Again, not the words, but the actions that count here.
Mr. Cuellar. Excuse me, Mr. Enriquez.
Well, apparently it's not working if he's been doing things since when he was a state legislature back in the early 90s. We need to fund these programs. We need to follow these sex offenders once they are identified as sex offenders so that when they move into the community, we know that they're there and the families that are there know that they're there and can adequately protect themselves from these sex offenders. And they do need statutory minimums when they are sex offenders and proven to be sex offenders. No question about it. But in order to do these kind of things, you need a special breed of probation officer. You need people that specialize in these kind of matters. And in order to do that, we're going to have to have adequate funds in order to take care of that and set up these programs. And again, we get back to the situation where we're spending money in a foreign country. We've got serious problems like this here at home. We need to get those matters resolved. We need someone that can go up there and say, gosh, more than say, there's nothing we can do. We can do more. We can end this war honorably. We can bring our children home, and we can set up programs that will adequately address this problem.
Mr. Avery.
I apologize. Can I have that question?
Sure. Sex offenders are targeting our Valley children online. What are your plans to protect children from online predators?
Yes, thank you. I was trying to figure out where the federal government had any authority in that, but I think that would be interstate commerce. If they're sending these kinds of things over the internet, then the federal government should be involved in it. That's and they ought to do what it takes to stop that kind of thing. And I can't tell you that I know what it is, but I'd certainly vote for something to do that, and it's certainly within the federal authority to do that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any rebuttals?
Let me just add one thing. There are certain vulnerable persons that we have in our society that we need to do everything to protect. Those are our children, and this is why, as a state legislator and as a congressman, we've not only changed the law to help address that issue, but we've added funding also. One thing, also not only our sex offenders, but we also have to look at domestic violence, and I think my opponents know very important why domestic violence is so important. Make sure that we protect women from being abused, and of course our seniors, and protect our seniors also.
Okay.
And in further rebuttal, one of the things that we can do here is, this is not simply a national problem. We're talking also about a state problem and a local problem, and we need to encourage, like in the Homeland Security, where all the different agencies are now sharing information, we need to do that at the state, local, and federal level, and make sure that these task forces, set up task forces, that there's an exchange of information and that they're adequately funded so that they can address this problem.
All right. This is the part where you each get to ask whomever you want a question. So we will begin with the person who won, of course, the drawing. Mr. Enriquez, you will begin.
My question is to Mr. Cuellar. Why have you voted so much with President Bush on the Iraqi war?
There you go again. You're entitled to your opinion, but the facts are facts. I have voted 77% times with the Democrats. The other 23% of the times, if I feel that it's not in the best interest of the district, I will vote with the district to make sure that we do this. As I mentioned a while ago, I was not there when the war started, so we inherited a war that we have to work with. We worked very hard, and I will protect our soldiers to every man and woman our soldiers is returned back. This is again why the disabled veterans have supported me. This is why we need to make sure that we keep protecting not only the soldiers who are out there, but also the veterans that are back here. I've been to Walter Reed, and I've seen the soldiers have come back. Very difficult times. to see the soldiers there. I've been in the homes of parents that have lost their children, and we need to do everything to protect our soldiers and at the same time move them away so they can move up the Iraqis, so the Iraqis can take responsibility of protecting their homeland, and we can start bringing our soldiers back as soon as possible.
Okay, Mr. Avery, you now have a chance to ask either of your opponents a question.
I don't think I have a question, Paul.
Okay. We go on to Mr. Cuellar. You now have the floor to ask either of your opponents a question.
For Mr. Enriquez. We all have a responsibility as citizens. How would you handle domestic violence? If you encounter a situation with domestic violence, how would you take care of a situation like that as a citizen?
I think the sex offender issue is also appropriate here in the sense that you would take care of it through task force, make sure that there's adequate education, that this doesn't happen, things of this nature. Make sure, for example, and I know you've had this problem in your office, where you've had a sex offender and there's been even a Secret Service investigation of your office in I think it's San Marcos, and the search warrant issued because somebody in your office was harassing someone sexually online. And as a congressman, I think that what you need to do in that type of situation is make sure that that doesn't happen. Don't wait for a search warrant to come. Don't wait for a situation where you have a Secret Service investigation. There needs to be better supervision, better security in the federal government as well as in the home.
Okay, now we're going to move on to some trivia questions. Well, I'll have a short time to answer this quick trivia. We will begin, of course, with Mr. Enriquez. How long is the term of a congressman?
The term of congressman is 2 years.
Okay. Mr. Avery, how many members are in the House?
Oh, is it something like 425, something like that? I can't remember.
There are 435 members of the House and 100 members in the Senate.
Okay.
And now to Mr. Cuellar. Who is the U.S. House of Representatives Sergeant at Arms?
Don't know.
That is Mr. Wilson Bill Livingood. Okay. Last question we're going to ask you here. We will start with, I think it is Mr. Cuellar now. Why are you better qualified to represent the Valley in Congress than your opponents?
I have the experience being from the border, lived during the border. My family comes from this area, from the Guerrero, Tamaulipas area, Zapata area, familiar for the border. I represent this area for 14 years as a state representative. Also, as a Texas Secretary of State, I dealt with this area in working the border areas, not only with colonias. In fact, I passed landmark legislation dealing with colonias, but also especially with higher education. As a member of the Budget Committee, when I was here, we added tuition, millions of dollars of tuition revenue dollars for this university. The Texas Grande this year, just $17 million that has come into this particular area, into the UT Pan Am, and of course the monies that we were able to bring in with the other legislators down to the South Texas Community College, which is one of the fastest growing areas. So I'm familiar with the border. I have the experience. I have the experience not only as a state legislator, as a congressman, as the Secretary of State, but more importantly, I feel very strongly committed to this particular community. I want to make sure that we improve education. I want to make sure that we improve health care. I want to make sure that we develop economic development for this area, especially for this area that's growing so fast. And I will make sure that we also make sure that we always put people first before anybody else.
Mr. Enriquez.
Right now, we have very, very serious questions and problems in this nation. Problems about the war in Iraq, problems about the budget, problems about the minimum wage. We haven't even talked about that. Problems that are affecting the family on a daily basis. And we need people that can go up there and not simply say, sorry, I don't understand the process. Sorry, there's nothing we can do. We need someone that can go up there and fight for this district. This district has been home to me, all areas of this district. And I will fight for this district. I fought in Southeast Asia for this country. I serve this country. I have a brother serving in Iraq. This family knows how to fight. My father served in Korea during the Korean War. We know how to fight. We know how to represent people. I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for almost 30 years. I've represented people all the way from JP Court to the Court of Appeals to the Supreme Court of Texas, all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. I represent people. I fight for people. I'm successful for people, and I can be successful for this district.
Mr. Avery.
Yes, thank you. As you can hear from the answers, by the way, I do like both of these gentlemen. It's been a pleasure running alongside them. I believe they are truly good people. The problem is they've been deceived like most of us. Every district thinks they send guys up there that represent just that district, and you come back with all the goodies, and you do what everybody wants to down in the district. Problem is that's called a democracy, and before it's over, you don't have anything because they're all doing that, and they're all voting away each other's property. I know the principles of property, and I know how to protect them, and I know where my authority is and where it isn't. I won't vote and will resist all voting and tell the Congress that they can't vote on an issue if they don't have delegated authority from the people to do so. Our Congress has filled the books with unlawful statutes that violate the Constitution and the principles of property that lay at its foundation. It doesn't matter where these people are. I'd like to say that. I mean, it's protection of property is the name of the game. The only thing you can vote on is that which you have lawful authority to implement. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the next question. Mr. Enriquez. This question comes from Eloy Gonzalez II, who is in our audience. Mr. Gonzalez says, according to a recent poll, some Americans want Congress to dig deeper into the 9/11 attacks. Would you be in favor of opening up a new investigation or forming another 9/11 commission, since new bones have been found? If you so want, what steps would you take to set it up?
Well, first of all, the recommendations on the 9/11 Commission have yet to be put into place, and I would recommend, Eloy, that we go ahead and do that. Let's take a look at that report. It contains some very, very important things in it. It contains some very, very important recommendations, and there just doesn't seem the money or the willpower to put these into place. And if new facts warrant it, certainly. We all want to know if there's more to 911 than we knew about, more terrorists, more plots, that we need more protection. Absolutely. America needs to be defended. And as a veteran, I've defended this country before in Southeast Asia. I've got a brother in Iraq doing the very same thing right now. No question about it. If we discover new important facts, then yes, there needs to be more investigation, more follow-up, and more security so that this doesn't happen here in the United States again.
Mr. Avery.
Yes, thank you. I would definitely push for that. That's one of my policies when I go there. There's no evidence at all of a single Jet 757 part in Shanksville. That's verified by the Somerset coroner that went out there moments after the crash. He left 20 minutes later, finding no jet parts, no human remains. He said it looked like it was a 15-foot ditch by a 20-foot ditch dumped with trash. There's no verifiable part of a 757 that hit the Pentagon. That cannot be shown anywhere. Before the wall collapsed, the wings didn't even break the glass, and they severed columns over there at the World Trade Center. The guy that ran the World Trade Center said he gave permission to blow up a 47-story building that day. Now, you can't do it with an investigation body up there in Congress. You're going to have a multi-separate state investigation, or you're just going to have another bunch of criminals investigating the criminals. You can't do that. And here we've instituted a police state in America and attacked innocent countries around the world to impose democracy on them over something that the government can't prove happened. Thank you.
Cuellar.
I voted to add all the 9/11 commissions. Unfortunately, on a straight party line, they were defeated. I will continue working to make sure that we add the 9/11 commission recommendation. Is what we need to make sure that we adequately protect our country. Our world has changed totally. The enemies that we used to have in the past were very different in the sense that you could see them. They were wearing certain uniforms. You knew who the good guys and the bad guys are. Now that has changed. Now we have a very evil type of enemy, invisible enemy, that are attacking our civilians, and we need to make sure that we do everything to make sure that we protect our homeland. This is why I will do everything to make sure that we have the proper funding for Homeland Security, make sure that they are given oversight, legislative oversight, and to make sure that we continue working till we add every single 9/11 Commission recommendation.
Okay. We will now move on to closing arguments, closing statements, I should say. As you know, you will have 2 minutes for this. We will begin with Mr. Cuellar.
Again, I want to thank the sponsors for allowing me to be here today. I look forward to representing this area. In January, when we open up the office here, open up one in Stark County, we are going to start hitting the ground running. This is why I've been doing a lot of preliminary work coming here to the university, coming to the other places in the district to make sure that we're able to know what the needs are in education, healthcare, economic development. As a congressman, my goals are very simple, very, very simple, and that is to work hard, to be accessible, and to produce real results. We will work hard to make sure that we're accessible to everybody. In fact, we're the only congressman in the whole district that provides in the country that goes to every particular city in their congressional district to provide office hours. I'll do the same thing for Jim Hogg, Stark County, and Hidalgo County to make sure that we go out there. We will make sure that we work to get the funding because there's been a historical deficiency of federal funding, and we'll do everything to make sure that we get more funding for healthcare, education, and economic development. The other thing that I think is important is to look at people that have come out and supported me. We've had mayors from this area. We've had local county officials. We've had state legislators that have come out and endorsed me. We have had 100% voting record with the NEA, which is our teachers, 100% with the disabled veterans. We've had the doctors, the hospitals, and other groups, business groups, that have come out and endorsed me because they know that I will do the work that's so important for this area. As your congressman, just one thing. I will work hard, I will be accessible, and I will produce for this congressional district. Thank you.
Okay, now for closing statements. 2 minutes will be given now to Mr. Avery.
Yes. I had a guy at one of our last forums that Frank was with me at NAACP. And he said, Ron, all that stuff sounds good, you know, but isn't that a utopia you're describing, you know, the principles of property? And you know, that's something to think about. What would you get by sending a guy like me up there that says you don't have authority to send educational funds down here? There's not a single word in the federal Constitution about education. What you have to do to have a good education is remove the Federal Education Agency, take away its taxing powers with all that stuff, and don't have them give you any more requirements. That's a state job. And the state only has authority to teach the principles of property so that each kid can defend his life, liberty, and possessions. That's Article 7, Section 1 of the Texas Constitution. Check it out. Anything other than that, you don't have lawful authority to teach in a free public school. Now, they say, well, what are you going to do? You're one guy. Well, the Army uses it all the time. Army of one, ever heard that? It's really a pretty good concept, and the concept is this. If you have an idea that's bigger than yourself and powerful, that one guy becomes bigger than himself and powerful. And this has happened before in history, and some individuals have literally brought nations under the law and set up prosperity that establishes the wealth of nations. And the reason we're not doing as well as we used to And the reason other countries are not doing good either is because they've abandoned the principles of property and lawful government and started buying all this global bank stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herring. Well, the winner of the drawing was Mr. Enriquez. You chose to go last. You now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you very much for coming out this evening. I think it shows how important your vote is. I need your vote. We need a change of course. We need to change the path that this country is on. Let me thank UT Pan Am. Let me thank NHPO, Channel 4, and its viewers, again, for giving us this opportunity to speak to you tonight. And I can tell you as a congressman, when I get elected, there's not going to be a need to come down here and learn what the issues are. I'm from here. I've lived all up and down across this district. I know what the issues here. I know what the issues are. I know that we need infrastructure down here. I know that we need I-69. I know that we need the levees fixed. If we don't get the levees fixed, the McAllen Airport is going to be underwater. Las Milpas is going to be underwater. I know what the issues are down here, and I know all across the border, nobody wants this fence. We cannot have that. But it all comes back to what are we going to do and where are we going to get the money for the projects that we need. For projects, for example, to make sure that the scholarships and the grants that these students need are adequately funded. It all comes back to the budget, and it all comes back to the war in Iraq. There is nothing more precious, of course, we know, than a mind, and you students are here to exercise that mind and do something great with it. And there's something that's also very important, lives. And right now, Americans' lives are at stake, at risk, in a civil war, in a country where we need to have solutions, where we need veterans' eyes who have been in that situation, who can come up with some solutions, and not simply follow as a president and Mr. Cuellar, who has supported him, which is stay the course, whatever that may mean. That means to me that they're out of ideas. Move over, let the Democrats take over, and let's get this done. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, thank you. I know this is not easy, being up there, being on the other side. I know this has been difficult. Audience, how do you think they did? We want to thank Representative Henry Cuellar, Mr. Frank Enriquez, Mr. Ron Avery for being here. We also want to thank, of course, the National Hispanic Professional Organization. We also want to thank the University of Texas at Pan American for putting this all together. Of course, we did this for the Valley. This political forum was put on for you. We want you to vote smart during campaign 2006. Of course, for more information on these candidates, you can go straight to our website at kgbt4.com. We will have everything on their platforms, their one-on-one interviews, and much more. I think tonight you got to see a cross-section of everything they've got to do. You got to see them talk about border issues, the wall, education. Audience, what do you think about all of this they handled today?
How do you all think the moderator did today?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. As you know, early voting has already begun. We're 3 days into early voting. It'll end November 3rd. People are still out there deciding all of this, deciding, of course, for the November 7th election. Of Grand Valley, we hope you've enjoyed the show, and good night.
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 Do you want that cold sore gone now? Think fast. Think Abreva. Unlike products that just soothe, Abreva's proven to speed healing. It goes deep in the skin to help heal cold sores from the inside out. So you're you again. Fast. Think fast. Think Abreva.
Introducing the new Family Value Meal from Pizza Hut. Start with 2 medium pizzas topped any way you want them. Add breadsticks and cinnamon sticks and a 2-liter of Pepsi, all for $19.99. You always get more when you go for the good stuff.